Okay, I'm going to do a video on luminosity masks and output printing in a case where you've got some blown highlights. This is a picture taken by a friend of mine in Berlin, and obviously a very tricky exposure to try and deal with the all the highlights and shadows in the building, etc. And this has had post-processing done, but unfortunately in places where you can't use a tripod, etc., it can be very hard to bracket and control some of these highlights. So if we go to window info and hold the little cursor over these areas, you can see up here they're recording at 255, which is pure white. In other words, they're blown out, they've no detail. Likewise, some of these areas are fairly close, 253, 254, so very, very close to being blown out. Traditionally, the way to deal with that would have been to use an output, a levels adjustment layer, changing the output. If I just show you that, levels adjustment, and at the moment you're printing from 0, which is pure black, to 255, which is pure white, and very often the printer will not put ink on the page whenever you're dealing with 255. So what you would have done would be change the output from 255 to say 245, and let's see what the effect of that is. If I turn that off and on, and now if I use the info and put it in here where it was recording 255, we have now forced it to read to 245. You can see up here it's now saying 245 for the output. So the printer will put ink on that part of the picture as if it was reading 245 as opposed to 255. Now the problem with that is, look what it has done to the other highlights in the picture. Changing the output to 245 has dulled the other parts of the picture, which you don't want. You know, you want to retain all the beautiful highlights up here. You do not want to slightly dull them, which that change to the output levels does. So what can you do to avoid that? The answer is luminosity mask. If I create a luminosity mask for the brightest highlights in the picture, which are lights 5, so if I press lights 5 and Command C to copy those highlights and Command J to put them on a new layer, I can now create a clipping mask with the levels adjustment layer so that it applies purely to the brightest highlights. So now whenever I turn it off and on, if you keep your eye on this area here, whenever I turn it on, it's filled with grey. So that is how you deal with the output levels for a print that has blown highlights, where you want to put ink on the page, and you do not want to. If I release the right click and release the clipping mask, you can see the effect that it has on the entire picture without the benefit of the luminosity mask and the clipping mask. So create clipping mask, that essentially clips the output adjustment that you have made purely to the brightest highlights. Now that might look like a blank layer, but if I put a sandwich layer in there and fill it with black, that shows you what's on this top layer. If I turn the black layer on, you can see what's on the layer above. So these are the bright, these are essentially what's known as lights 5. So that is the only part of the image that is being affected by the outputs. So I'm going to delete that black layer. So if you were to print that now, you get ink on the page there as if that was 245, and everything else is unaffected. And the image is, particularly in here, has kept all the very fine detail, etc. So do try and get used to using luminosity masks and find the various ways in which they can help you produce a super print.